Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters Podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today. Today's episode of the Firefighters Podcast, we're doing something a little different, and it wasn't planned. So normally I'm one of the people asking the questions. I'm the person facilitating the podcast, but today the roles are going to be flipped a little bit because I'm going to be in the hot seat. Now, this conversation was recorded live at South Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service Training Centre, and that's in Sheffield, and it's part of the International Men's Day 2025, which was November 19th. Now, I was going down to this event anyway because I think these things are great. I enjoy spending my time around positive male role models, people I look up to, people that can inspire me. And it's run by my good friend Mark Pert. And I was due to be going down there, and he rang me the day before and said, one of the speakers has dropped out. Would you mind doing an hour on stage? And I said, sure, happy to jump up and have a chat about anything. And then as that conversation evolved, they got back to me about half an hour later and said, we've got someone that would interview you. Gary has been on the podcast before. So that's how this whole thing kind of came about. Now, International Men's Day is a chance to take something that really is not spoken about enough in society, in my opinion. And it's an opportunity for us to talk plainly about the contribution of men, the contribution that they make, not in just a performance way, but in the real boots on the ground sense. It's about shining a light on many things, including men's mental health, on the pressures men carry quietly and often stubbornly, on the way men have shaped society and the way we are shaped by role models around us. And also a lot about why positive masculinity is still something not just worth defending, but worth celebrating. I personally have benefited tremendously from strong male role models. I think strong male role models have always been essential in the development of young men. Not just fathers, but uncles who teach and craft, and coaches out there who demand more from you than even you think you have. Older mates who show you what good behavior looks like, or talk to you about girls, or talk to you about being safe out on the streets before you understand any of the reasons as to why it matters. So you haven't got to learn some of those fatal lessons yourself. Those people fill the gaps that families, schools, and sometimes society even misses. And for as long as anyone can remember, I think, of course I would say this biasly, firefighters have sat right inside that circle. Whether they're meant to or not, firefighters have been uncles, older brothers, big brothers to their communities, coaches with helmets on, trying to encourage ordinary men, young and old, to do extraordinary things, to act with the best values and morals of our society. And that's what the public see, that's what the public view. And I think that visibility really matters. So if we unconsciously, which is what I think we're doing, seek to soften or sanitize that dynamic too far, we risk losing something really, really important. The presence of capable, grounded, disciplined men with high standards and high compassion does not harm society, I don't think. I think it stabilizes it. When men like that step back or feel they no longer have permission to be that figure, the vacuum doesn't stay empty. It is filled with whatever shouts the loudest, the Andrew Tates or other, insert your own example here. And often that's not the healthiest influence, in my personal opinion. So before we dive in, I want to say a massive thank you to the people who made that day happen and who invited me to it. So Chief Fire Officer Chris Kirby, Station Manager Gary Devonport, who's been on the podcast before. Go back and you can find him. He hosted this interview. We're on stage together in front of a room, 100 or so people, however many there was there. And most importantly, of course, my good friend, Watch Manager Mark Pert, main organiser and driving force behind this entire South Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service International Men's Day event. Energy was great there. Honesty, the bravery, a few emotional points during the day. The room was something special. One thing to mention before you listen. Sorry, this is such a long introduction, but you might notice I sound a little bit different and a little bit uncomfortable. Certainly at the start, I'm used to being the one behind the mic, controlling the flow, not the one being questioned. Being interviewed is not exactly my comfort zone. And also, it's on a stage surrounded by people. If I do sound a bit pinned to the wall early on, that's why. Once we warm up, we go all over the place. We go deep. We go childhood, bullying, high performance, my own self-destruction, addiction recovery, identities in the fire service. We talk a little bit around professional avatars, masculinity, men's mental health, alcohol, culture. And I, only because I'm asked, give my opinion on all of these things. So if you've ever wanted to wonder what I really think about stuff and who the person is that's put this whole thing together, it's remarkably unimpressive, and hopefully it humanizes us. I often say I think the strongest thing a man can be is fully human. Don't pretend to be some utopian perfection. No one is that. I'm a walking bin fire. It's just trying to be a little bit better every day. That's the whole eternal student mindset of the podcast. So this is the live recording with myself, Pete Wakefield, and Station Manager Gary Devonport from South Yorkshire Fire and Rescue. I hope it sparks some conversations. I hope it reminds a few people that strong men, masculinity, are not a problem. They are an essential ingredient in creating positive cultures in society, in the workplace, and the fire and rescue service. Strong men have always been part of the solution. Let's jump in there, and I'll see you on the other side.
So I suppose the best place to start then, Pete, is tell us a little bit about the podcast. I'm sure people in the audience have listened to it. So where did it come from?
So started the podcast about 6 years ago as I was coming to the end of a variety of different chapters in life, which we can go into. And I suppose it was really the thing I wish existed when I joined. You know, you probably all sat in front of senior leaders many times. And, you know Dave, you know Sam, you know whoever on a personal level, and you go, they're not like that. That's not how they talk in real life. You know, that's all the corporate speak and everything like this. And you wanted to learn really who they were. So I say to people, imagine if you could listen back to the first watch manager you ever had. Imagine if you could listen back to Braidwood, to Grimwood. Imagine if you could listen to your great granddad. You've been in the military and the paras and stuff like that. Imagine if you could listen to someone from 30 years ago without all the editing and all the bump and all the cleansed for corporate bureaucracy and all that sort of stuff. So that was really, really the birth child of it. It doesn't make any money. And I said to Steve, the bloke here before, he's doing a podcast and stuff. And most people do them because they're a funnel for a marketing thing or a book they're selling or whatever. You know, the podcast is just the thing I wish existed when I joined, really.
Yeah. Obviously, we've heard from a variety of speakers this morning. Just kind of reflecting back on them, Pete. And obviously, Michael talked at great length about his childhood, and Steve did as well. Like, what was a childhood for Pete Wakefield?
You want my sob story?
If you want to give us it, yeah, I think people...
Mine's remarkably unimpressive. You know, Jesus Christ, Steve's, Michael's, wow, these people have really, really challenging lives when they brought up. Mine, unfortunately, was all self-created. And I don't know if anybody else relates to that. Like when you hear an amazing story, you go, wow, Christ, how could they have been any different? You know, their dad was an alcoholic, their mum was this, I created a lot of this stuff for myself. So I had a great childhood. Parents were fantastic. And it wasn't until I was probably 10, a little bit older than that, went through bullying at school. A lot of people probably got bullied. I've always been very much into sport, probably toxically competitive. I was not a nice person to play around with, whether it was regional rugby. I went up to international ice hockey and roller hockey. But I started to develop a bit of a sort of a dual life of, honestly, like high performance and self-destruction, to be honest. When I was going through my GB ice hockey and roller hockey stuff, we started given personal trainers and nutritionists to help us. We went over to Canada and competed there a few times. And they went, oh, you're pretty strong. And I started falling into that rabbit hole, and I started doing some powerlifting and some strongman. And then I started finding myself around performance enhancing drugs. And that led me down into, oh, you should go and be a doorman because you're quite nice and strong. And then I was doing fire service since I was 18, and I had a job in a gym. I was doing doorman during the night, and then I was 94 hours on call. So I got involved in a lot of stimulants to start with. So it was amphetamines, speed, things like that, because I'd be working from 11 at night till 4 in the morning on the doors. I'd come straight back, I'd be on call. I'd be doing my day job. I'd be personal training at night, and then I'd go straight back onto the doors. And one of the effective cycles for doing that was different forms of narcotics. And on top of that, I was taking masses and masses and masses of steroids, growth hormone, anything you could inject or take that thought you might give you a personal enhancement of some form. And again, when I relate to Steve's story and to Michael's, there was no real reason for it. And I don't know if anyone else feels it when they feel like their life is a bit of a walking bin fire. You haven't got a convenient thing to point at. Do you know what I mean? We all like to point fingers. It's hard to point thumbs. And mine wasn't really anything I could blame. I just started setting fire to different parts of my life. So
this episode is brought to you in partnership with Godiva Limited. Godiva is one of the world's leading providers of specialist equipment for emergency services market. Godiva produces a comprehensive range of fire pumps, including vehicle-mounted, portable, and their cutting-edge integrated total water flow control system, SAMFlows. I've been using Godiva my entire career as a reliable pump on the fire ground. It is such a crucial element of a successful firefighting team that you want to empower your crews with the very best, reliable, quality product. Reach out to our partners by checking the notes in the podcast. Now back to the show.
Parents chucked me out. They found needles in my bedroom. You have to keep growth hormone in a fridge, if anybody doesn't know. So steroids are really hard to lie about. You just hide them somewhere. You've got the needles and everything like that. Growth hormone, you have to keep it refrigerated when you mix it. So I had a little fridge in my room, which obviously would hum with a little fan on it. And my dad was not a stupid man. And they found all the needles in there. And they didn't have the language to be able to communicate. It was so foreign to them. They didn't understand drugs. You see needles, you think drug addict, if you play word association game, and they couldn't understand it. They didn't have the language to, and it was either stop or leave. So I went to then go and live with my girlfriend's brother at the time, because he was actually with his missus and they'd bought a house. So he had this house that was just empty. So I would go and use that. And that continued on then till I was about 23, through a series of doing things for other people. When you start taking drugs, you start facilitating other people taking drugs, and then you start selling drugs to feed your own habits. And when you're a big, strong guy that works on the doors, you're around a lot of people that want to take a lot of drugs, and it just facilitates a bit of a vortex of a downward spiral. And that just continued, to be honest, until I was 23 when my daughter was born.
So just to dip into that a little bit, you're going to pretend that these people are not here.
Yeah, sorry.
Just going back to, you glazed over a little bit around that thing at 10, the sort of bullying. Looking back now as an older man, not going to say you're old because you're much bigger than I am, but as an older man and a father, how much do you look back and think, maybe actually some of my life choices were related to that time of feeling vulnerable by being bullied?
Yeah, so I was, what would I have been, year 6, year 7. So I was competing in regionals and the all schools national stuff. And I was beating people years ahead of me. And I was a horrible kid as I was toxically competitive. I was really, really, ego was massive, and older kids didn't like that. So when I was sort of in year 7, when I was going into the next school, a lot of year 9s would wait behind. They'd chase you across the fields, kick the hell out of you. And then you'd create lies and reasons you couldn't go to school. And I think that's probably where trying to build a physical shield so that no one would ever do anything to me, no one ever touched me again. So I got into jiu-jitsu and a bit of boxing. And that's probably what led me into taking masses and masses of steroids. When I got to my heaviest, I was 24 stone. I haven't got a ready presentation, but I'll probably show some old photos of me when I competed in international strongman when I was about 21, and I was 24 stone, massive. And it was just, I didn't need to demonstrate myself academically. I didn't matter what my opinion was. Look at me, no one can touch me, blah, 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 blah. And that led into, all of it is just a mask. It's just a beautifully convenient, big, shiny mask. But I always talk to people about toxic, but short-term fuels. So things like anger, betrayal, bitterness, all of these things, they are really, really, really super effective, but you can't burn them long term because they often poison the vessel more than they do anything else. It's a bit like, the analogy where a rocket ship goes into space and it burns 70% of its fuel straight away. But if it keeps doing that, the whole thing will just explode. And that was me for that sort of period of life. I was like, I'm just going to be the best athlete. I'm going to go faster and stronger and harder than anybody else. And that then led to prolapse in my back. I tore my whole pec major off. I had surgery there. I tore this rotator cuff off. I had surgery there. And even just last year, I went through Narcotics Anonymous and recovery when I was 22, 23, when I was married back then. And even now, I had collapsed veins on my legs from squatting 300 and something kilos. And if anyone sees the stuff on socials, I'm wearing compression socks today because I'm only about 9 weeks post-surgery because of all the damage. You start, life decisions like that, you start writing checks that you don't realize you're going to still be paying in 20 years' time. But I don't know, when people go, what advice you'd have for your kid back then? I don't know. My parents are fantastic. So I don't know what advice I'd give to myself back then, because I think sport has so many net benefits. My missus and my sister are both teachers. When we talk about the curriculum in schools and the diminishment of the sports and stuff like that, I think we forget what we're losing there. It sounds like a meathead just going, everyone should go around and play rugby. I'm like, no. It's the leadership, it's the setbacks, it's the team building, it's all of that character you develop through a form of athleticism. And you haven't got to go to the World Championships of whatever. But I don't know what I'd tell myself back then, to be honest. I don't even think I'd listen to you. I was just so narrow focused on it.
Yeah.
It is beyond a privilege to be able to bring the Firefighters podcast to you, and we are so grateful for every single person that supports, listens, shares, and follows our journey. But here's the honest truth. It takes a colossal amount of time and work to keep the podcast going. And to help us keep doing it, create more, reach more guests internationally, and make the podcast sustainable, we're asking for you to help. And to do this, we've set up a Patreon page. Now, by joining this, you'll not only support the future of the podcast, but also gain access to exclusive benefits. Now, if you've ever wanted to meet a member of the podcast, buy us a beer, buy us a coffee, and you think anything you've ever listened to on the podcast has been worth £3, that's basically what we're asking you for. By joining our Patreon community, you will get access to every single full episode archive we have ever made. Now, hundreds and hundreds of key documents that we've got in there on fire behavior, firefighter health, cancer risks, incident debriefs, and so much more. So if you feel like you want to join the Patreon crew and help us make this possible, head to patreon.com/TFFPC or check the link in any episode podcast notes.
For those who it may not be obvious, Pete is in the UK Fire Service. He's a watch manager. Obviously, you joined what year?
I'm 36 now. I joined when I was 18. So what's that? 2007?
Yep.
Something like that. Yep.
So from obviously today's International Men's Day. Mm-hmm. How do you think that in your time, which is the same time as myself, I joined in 2007 as well. How do you think the role of a firefighter from a male environment has changed? Because realistically, all the things you just mentioned scream to me as sort of alpha male, and we do still work in them, alpha male type competitive environments. Do you still see that from the people you interview and the people you come across in your role in a podcast?
This is the hypocrisy of I'm a walking, talking hypocrite half the time, because I still, you stopped taking all the performance syndromes, but look at you, for God's sake. You walk around, you're the tight t-shirt wearing guy, you look like the toxic male guy. You're a bold, white firefighter. You could see me on the front of the Daily Mail saying, this person bullied or grabbed, whatever. It just fits the mold, unfortunately. But I realized when I was going through, when Michael spoke about AA, Narcotics Anonymous is something a lot of people don't really know about. It's a hidden, scarier part of the sector. People are very much more aware of alcoholism, but follow a similar 12-step program. I went through that in my early 20s, and you started to learn we have to do so much self-reflective stuff and NLP and finding your anchors and your behaviors and killing environments and going through any change like that, big, small, whether you struggle with a substance or not. Change is, there's rarely ever a big, beautiful montage. Steve had a great montage. It's actually just a long series of really, really difficult, clunky goodbyes. You have to say goodbye to environments. You have to say goodbye to people to try and become the person that you want to try and be. There's no future version of that old thing, but it's so much of your identity. And I come to that identity point that we have in the fire service. So in the fire service, we create professional avatars of ourselves, if you will. Like, how many courses have you been to? And they go, right, let's just do a quick hello. Let's go around the room. Gary, could you introduce yourself? Hi, I'm Gary. I've been in for 17 years. I'm a group manager in... No one cares. No one cares. Yeah? But that is the avatar we present, isn't it? I'm always the awkward guy that goes, hi, I'm Pete. I've got 2 dogs. Daughter's name is Lily. I like doing sport. We've recently started learning sign language together. And they go, no, Pete, tell us what you do. Tell us how long you've been in... Why? Does it make my opinion any better than yours? Does it make me something, you know, I get so triggered by so much of this stuff because it leans us into the avatar that's not really us. We walk around with rank markings on our shoulders. Yeah, I have a massive one with that. So you're a level 2 commander? What, on a scale of 1 to 0, what's the likelihood you would need to take over a level 2 incident at this incident state? And I know you work for a service and there's a mandated uniform and all that sort of stuff.
But yeah, fairly low.
Fairly low. Now, I think that's super important. It's really important where? On the Instagram. Yeah, I need to know who's in charge. I need to know who the senior leader is and all this sort of stuff. But it bleeds over into our organizations. And I think one of the symptoms that shoots out from that, and one thing we're really struggling with in our cultures now, is we start to find reasons to point at things like toxic masculinity. Things that are typically masculine, if I had to think of traits, I would say assertiveness. I would say courage. Now, it's not to say these aren't shared by both genders and all that sort of jazz, but these are the things that we don't just call masculinity, we call it toxic masculinity. And we do need to continue to cleanse all environments of those behaviors. But what we end up doing is throwing lots out. What I think we end up doing is throwing lots of these things out in the same bucket. And we tell people that courage without humility is wrong. We tell them that capability with ego is wrong. And those things are true. But if you strip out all of what you believe to be toxic, and then with it, you pull out everything that is good, you don't just create a safer person, you create a hollow person. Because those are many of the character traits which are incredibly positive. And again, both genders share them. But don't you hate that we have to do a caveat like that? If we want to talk about men's suicide rates, we have to caveat it by, I know all of the genders struggle, but can we just... Why do we apologize for that? Why do we do that? I know I don't want to focus too much on this. I don't want to make it a provocative thing, but men do have a greater risk appetite. Okay, there's more of us at tops of organizations. There's also more of us in prison. There's also more of us that kill ourselves. So we're winning at those two as well, are we? Yeah. And I get very worried about where we're going. And I think we need to be very surgical and intentional about how we try and create safe spaces. Speaking to Mr. White Ribbon earlier, yeah? Have him on. We did some White Ribbon stuff. AFSA, I do a Women in the Fire Service every year. And this is not to say I'm a performative ally, but it is to say you can still have these things. You know, we can all be confident without having an over-indexed ego. We can be strong and still be humble. These things can live in symbiosis, do you know what I mean? And I think the massive challenges we're having with culture, we can't hang all of them on the white male or on men or on whatever. Do you know what I mean? And I think we need to be very, very careful about that before we ostracize the largest majority of our workforce. What do you think? You're at work today, so let's see what your response is.
Thanks,
Let me just pass that one up. I don't say these things to be provocative or malicious, but they're important conversations that we don't have.
I think from my point of view, it is the delivery of all the things that you're talking around. And that's what separates you from toxicity to actually that are just behaviours that are accepted in society today.
They should be celebrated, not just accepted.
Well, that's why we're here today.
And that is the whole point of why we're here today. But you ask how many people know it's International Men's Day today. Do you know what I mean? Because when we get rid of those things, we lose great coaches. We lose great mentors. We lose great uncles. We lose great role models. You know, I say to watchers or even to families, like Michael, like what he has done, the incredible cognitive lift that he has had to do to rip himself off the launching pad of where he was born and the situation he was born in. you probably win the lottery 10 times before you get that outcome. But you don't see the graveyard of people that had no role model, that had nobody. If you sit at your watch table and you can't see a role model, you need to move. If you're sitting at home, and how many people don't have a positive male role model for young men in their household, you are a massive disadvantage. And people like that, people like Michael, do you know what the Matthew principle is?
No.
So does anybody know what the Matthew principle is? Google it. It's the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. You've all heard it. It's called the Matthew principle, yeah?
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Gore-Tex Professional Fabrics. Now, we all know the working environment of a firefighter is filled with challenges. We face serious risks on the job, such as heat exhaustion, burns, physical and mental stress, and we frequently come into contact with high levels of toxic chemicals. Now, I have been wearing Gore-Tex for nearly 2 decades on the front line, working in hostile environments, tackling challenging incidents from firefighting to water incidents and in urban search and rescue environments. Gore-Tex have a well-earned reputation for protecting professionals in the fire and emergency services through their family of highly innovative, waterproof, breathable moisture barriers that exceeds global performance standards and are trusted worldwide. Gore-Tex, going further together.
People that are born into or enter into an environment that has great role models, is socioeconomically in a higher place, they get better access to education, they get better access to care, they get better access to opportunities. Can't be blind luck that you just hope you meet the good sports teacher at school. It's not going to be luck that you bump into a police officer that takes an interest in helping you get away from this environment that you're in. We can't rely on that as luck, because otherwise people in those environments, how many people have been to incidents on the same streets for the last 40 years? Yeah, well, you all know it, whatever it is in South Yorkshire, the patch that has the same families living there over and over again, and we cannot seem to fix that socio-economical spiral, and that is not going to change unless we can give them some positive role models. And the military, the police, the fire service used to be places where those role models could be sought. They could go there and go, I want to do something really difficult, and I want someone to push me and pull that out of me. And they come to these spaces, and if we've sterilized them and we've neutered their role models, they go, if we soften the standard for a job that not everybody can do, it's not just unethical, it's immoral, it's dangerous. And I know we don't soften standards, and people say, well, I don't do this. There's nothing wrong with that. Me and this gentleman, and where's your colleague? He's gone. There he is. We were talking before. I can do what they do. Jesus Christ, they're both police officers. Yeah. I also couldn't do what my missus does with people with severe learning difficulties. I don't think I could do end-of-life care, palliative care, because it's just different people suit different things. And I think we shouldn't diminish the great role models, many of which are across different genders. But there's also a great number of great positive male role models in our organizations that I think we do nothing but ask them to apologize for who they are and what they stand for. And I'm not sure we've quite cracked that nut yet, but we're just going to keep hitting it with the cultural lump hammer until morale improves or something like that.
So going back to role models, and who's your role model now?
Who's my role model now?
Role model stroke models.
He's one. That's Mark Pert, I'm pointing at in the front of this audience. Matt Adams is a close friend of mine. I still work with James, is my coach, my sponsor from Narcotics Anonymous. My role model is not bloody Elon Musk or whoever. Do you know what I mean? I don't know them. I'm intimately aware of how infectious the behaviors of people around me can be. Because like I say, I didn't have a bad childhood. And I just set fire to myself. Yeah, I just went, my life's great. For no reason than anything else, I'm just going to set fire to all the good things and be kicked out of my dad was my best man at my wedding about 5 years after they kicked me out. And that was so rare. That was so unlikely that we got there. And we failed multiple times to rebuild our relationship. And it was just through keep leaning into difficult conversations that I managed to get him there and for him to be there for me. But that is so rare. So I focus now on putting myself, and I've said it to you, I've sent you a message about it before. I say to people, I really appreciate you as a friend. You make me a better person. And I want to be around people that make me a better person. And I relate that back to our organizations and our watches and our teams. We should want to be around people that call the best from us. Because if we just say, competent, that's all we're asking for, mate. That's all we're looking for. Firefighters, in my opinion, in fact, it's a John McDonough quote, a guy we've had on a few times. We will raise ourselves to a level of mediocrity to avoid further scrutiny. We will be just good enough. I don't think we get promoted for taking risks. I think we get promoted for being safe. But that's not going to get us there. That's not going to get us where I think we need to go. It's going to take someone, you, Chris, whoever. There's lots of people doing great work in lots of organizations. But we can't just keep being quiet to keep a few people happy, if that makes sense. Yeah. Because it's just going to be a race to the bottom. I don't think I answered your question.
Feel good, bro.
MSA are supporting us on today's podcast, and I chose to partner with them because I've been wearing this stuff for nearly 20 years, and they are the global leader in development, manufacture, and supply of incredible, safe products that really protect people, not just our communities out there, but also first responders, most importantly, all over the world. Get yourself over to MSA and have a look at it. The high-performance protective clothing for emergency services responders. They also partner with us on the UK Pink Firefighters. It's because we love them. The helmets with the reflective visor, the F1XF, absolutely epic helmet. And not forgetting how they improve firefighter safety through their connectivity in the connected firefighter platform. MSA are always pushing the envelope, and it's a real privilege to be able to continue to grow our partnership together. So whether it's your PPE, your bunker gear, your helmets, your SCBA, your thermal imaging, your Luna, or your portable gas detection, both of us know that this equipment needs to work. It needs to be high quality, reliable, and dependable in the moment. And that's why I use MSA, because they know what's at stake.
Just going back to the podcast, obviously, as a former podcaster myself, you sometimes don't really grasp the reach and the influence that you have, for yourself in the fire sector, and for myself in the sort of football arena, which is incredibly tribal anyway. But in a world that we live in now, where social media is God essentially, and we get maybe young people who see role models, as we've just discussed, who are probably not the best role model. How do you see the Firefighters podcast as trying to, direct young people, particularly who might not be in the fire sector, to seek out them good role models that are there, as opposed to someone who is, we see now, I'm a celebrity. Sorry if there's any angry Ginge fans in the audience, but, do you look at your daughter and go, yeah, you need to look at Angry Ginge and that's what you should strive to be? Or do you look at some of your guests and say, actually, look at what they've got to get? And I'm not personally a big believer in having one role model. So I always remember, and I think people in and amongst you who've been promoted over years, you take a little bit off everybody and you say, I'll use that and I'll not use that because I didn't really like that. And you become almost like a megazord of gaffers you've worked for. So for yourself and people you've interviewed and this social media environment that we live in now, how do you use that Firefighters podcast as a vehicle for good?
So there's a great book called Tribe of Mentors. It's a fantastic book, and it speaks exactly to your point around we are just a manifestation of 1,000 fingerprints that someone has put into us. We're a cocktail. There's no original thought anymore. You are a product of your family, your military background, your fire, so all your friends, whatever. That all of us are that very thing. But there's loads of people. Mark, again, there's loads. Yeah, they've got. If you're trying to quantify impact, like they've got lots more social media followers or whatever it might be. I think if you want to make a really long-term impact in something, and that wasn't even what I'm trying to do with it. It's an entirely selfish project. We would do it. You do. Everybody does this. You've already done it. How many people have sat at a watch table and asked somebody really interesting questions for like an hour or two? Usually when you get back from a call or you're waiting to go to bed, it's 10:30. It's just that. That's all it is. But that's the thing I wish existed when I joined. I wished I could go and listen to the person that was first in attendance at Grenfell. I wish I could go and listen to the fire behaviour expert. I could go and listen to you come on and talk about wildfires, because I didn't know. And you'd hear it fifth hand from your mate who would get it wrong and they misremember it and they fill it with all sorts of rubbish. Do you know what I mean? But imagine if you could go back and listen to that. But if you want to, because it's 8 point something million people it's reached now in 6 years. But the growth curve on that is like that. And then, 3, 4 years. I think to be good at anything, and I don't even think we're good at this, the whole point of it is an eternal student mindset. And I think you would only probably do something like that because there should be 10 of these. Every service should have one. I think every service should have one of these because I haven't got time to speak to everybody. And also some people won't listen to it because they hate me. Because I've got ADHD and I speak too fast and I'm annoying and I keep interrupting him, and all this sort of stuff. There should be loads of versions of this. Because how many interesting people have you spoke to in the emergency services? Yeah, thousands. They're not going to write a book. They're not going to do their memoirs. They might tell some of their kids, but the family's probably bored of listening to it. And then that person will go and we'll go, Gary, you? And me and Chris said it. We were looking at the new memorial garden outside, weren't we? And we said, a person dies twice. They die, and it's the last time their name is mentioned. You're at a station, you point on the wall and go, who's that? And they go, I don't know. And then the next station change comes up and it gets chucked in the bin and it gets skipped. And we don't remember all this stuff. And history doesn't necessarily repeat itself, but it certainly rhymes. I often think when I speak to Firefighters Memorial Trust or a union representative or whoever, they'll go, oh, we'll be talking about something that's happening now in a service. And they'll go, yeah, we had that about 15 years ago. Yeah. And sometimes we need to remember more than we need to learn because a lot of this stuff has happened before and we would do it in cyclic fashions. We'll be doomed to repeat it if we don't learn from it. So I'm not worried about it. I always call it learning out loud. It's my own little selfish university. But it doesn't matter. No one cares. No one cares. If you go on and you say, National Operational Guidance 8.4 and they go 7.2, moron. No one cares. No one cares. But we don't create that level of psychological safety in our own organisations. Anybody been part of a debrief here? Raise hands. Anybody contributed to debrief in this organisation? How long did it take from the incident to getting the debrief released? Honestly. Now, you might give me a different answer because you're a leader that wants to support it.
I'm going to leave it to the audience on the answer to that one.
Good question. Someone, you raised your hand, sir? Yeah. So how did you contribute to it? Was it an interview? Did you just write something down?
I've had quite a few to first to see an interview, or you write down what you've done and then it comes out about an interview later on. And then
Did anybody die in any of them? Members of the fire service?
Oh, no.
No. So how long did it take? Because if that was one, you'd go, hang on a minute, Chris and the team and everyone might need to do a big, long thing. We don't know what legally this sits in, but a few months. Yeah? And did they put it out exactly as you wrote it down? I should probably not do this in the South Yorkshire, sorry, but I wish there was more services here that could talk about, like, how long, did they write it exactly as it was stated? Or did they balance it against what everybody else said?
I think they balanced it against everyone else.
Of course they did, because your memory's probably not great, mine's not great. We have this thing where we can't remember things very well, and sometimes it gets sterilised. Sometimes it gets corporatised, because it needs to make sure control are happy with it, and so it happened. It's okay. It happened. So let's learn from it. As long as he doesn't come out and say, Mark from Red Watch was rubbish. Yeah, and we go, well, that's not fair because Mark wasn't there. Yeah, and he's a nice guy, bad moustache, but good kisser. You've got to get the balance right. It's not for you to say, Mark can come on and talk for himself if he wants to, but there's nothing wrong with doing that. And I think that's how we're going to learn best, is just creating psychological safety and going, that last project was a bit of a stillbirth. What's the crack, Chris? Didn't really like it. Worked very well. Chris will probably talk about it. But Chris has got bosses as well and people that he has to, he can never separate himself. I think Chris is the only senior leader in the room? Yeah. Sorry, I apologise. Who else is a senior leader in the room? Hello, boss. What's your name, sir? Sam. I just want to stop saying Chris, sorry. Sam, you can't separate yourself from the organisation, probably ever, because of your position in it. You're always on duty in some capacity. So for the Combined Fire Authority and everybody else in the unions and all that sort of stuff, you will have to be responsible in your communication. Sometimes, despite the best of intentions, that sometimes misses the detail, doesn't it? It sometimes misses some of the lessons learned because we've got agreement in place. We're not allowed to talk about this or allowed to talk about that. And I think that's what we try and do on it. We never let anybody commit professional suicide. I want to speak into a fire service that I would love to see more of. And it's only my little child project. You know, there's loads of people who would be way better at doing it. But everybody in this room would have an interesting story to tell. But most people aren't going to hear it, and they're not going to learn from it. And we're scared about saying it. We definitely wouldn't post it on social media because of the potential ramifications. And I know we can get there. And I don't think I'm the person to do it. But this is just a tool for people that want to learn more about the sector, or they want someone to go, hey, you know that beer shuffle thing we still do? Isn't that ridiculous? Why are we still doing it? Have you seen what the Swedes or the Americans or whatever do? And that's what I try and create with it.
So for anybody in the audience who may not have heard the Firefighters podcast, where can they find it?
Everywhere and anywhere. I mean, they probably scan that thing if it works. Spotify, YouTube, Apple, all that sort of jazz, social media, anything like that. I wanted to ask you about alcohol, or are we up on time?
No.
Wicked.
Yeah,
because we were talking earlier about recovery and addiction. We shared a short conversation here. Tell us about your alcohol consumption.
Yeah, so we were chatting earlier in Pete, and we've met before, and we're friendly as I am with a lot of people in this room. And Pete has a good way of kind of saying, you know, when you meet other firefighters, you generally talk about the fire service. So if you bump into each other outside of work, it's, hey, family all right, mail getting through, I've been busy at work, what are you doing about this? We naturally default back to that comfortable position.
We puddle jump in shallow conversations.
So Pete had a really good way earlier of just saying, what are you doing outside the fire service? And it almost made me sort of reflect. And I said to Pete, I said, I'm on a bit of a journey at the minute. That was the actual phrase where I said, I've kind of embraced sobriety that I'd tried previously. Not that I'm an alcoholic, by the way, but I kind of just got to an age of 41 where I was like, it doesn't give me anything anymore. And I kind of saw it for what it was, if that makes sense. So again, I'm not going to go through it. I've got obviously a lot of people in the audience who know a lot about it.
What did it give you?
It probably gave me a bit of social norm, as in it was just what we did. So
because your family did it.
Family full of drinkers. You join the army. Somebody gets promoted, you drink. Someone dies, you drink. Someone, chips a toenail, you drink. Any day that ends in Y, you drink. And I know that that's not the military today. It's not reflective of today's armed forces, but it certainly was in my time. Yeah. You're going away on tour, you drink. You have 7 months dry, you come home, you drink. It just becomes almost a part of life.
You ever taken any other drugs?
No, never touched anything other than alcohol.
Raise your hands if you drink alcohol, or if you've ever drank alcohol. Ever. Cool. Show of hands if you've ever had weed. Okay, doesn't mean they're having it at the minute. Just means they've had it somewhere else. Anybody that's ever had heroin? Anybody that's ever had cocaine? Anybody that's ever had amphetamines? Okay, which drug do we think causes the greatest societal cost? Shout out. Alcohol. If we went around your house tonight and we smoked a load of weed, yeah, won't be on duty tomorrow, but smoked a load of weed, what might happen to us?
I get hungry, I think, so I've been told.
Probably be laughing at the table. We'd go around the shop and buy.
I would imagine after very little, other than obviously the effects of the drugs, yeah.
If we went round yours and got leathered, you might beat me up. We might go outside and smash a car up. I might go home and push my missus down the stairs. Yeah. There's only 2 drugs you can be chemically addicted to. Please call BS rubbish in the audience if you disagree, but I'm pretty confident it is heroin and alcohol. They're the 2 ones you be chemically. Everything else is a bit difficult. Nicotine, caffeine, everything like that, the headaches. They're the only 2 you get chemically addicted to. As in, if you stop drinking and you're an alcoholic, you'll die. We have to cross-addict you onto something else. But most of the people in this room, if not all of them, my eyesight's not great, consume alcohol. I'm not going to try and stand there on my ivory tower and say anything. I am an addict. You never stop being an addict. So I have to be really sensitive and go to the extreme example. Otherwise, I will make lovely little excuses to sell it to myself about, hey, it's not a problem. Yeah. So I have to, I belligerently be very extreme with myself to stop me doing that. But it is the societal drug. Everybody does it. And How have you felt since you stopped?
Yeah, Middlesbrough. Yeah.
How would you, tactically in your life, what's different? What, you see miles better.
I'm just...
Can't understand what miles better means.
More there, more present. I'm there for my family. I'm more motivated. I see life without a cloud. Again, not a surprise to many people. I've been quite open about it. I've struggled with my mental health over the last sort of 7-8 years. And now looking back with kind of different, alcohol was probably part of the problem or had an element of being part of the problem, as much as I thought it was a crutch that could let me escape the suffering. Sounds a bit of a harsh word, but the pain that I was going through, I didn't really understand why I was going through it. It gave you that escape, but then what you actually realise is then it's only a short-termism, and then before you know it, it actually contributes to the problem. So again, like I really want people to in the crowd to not think I'm sat here like trying to demonise drinking. Like
no.
You do you. Like of course. I've just hit that time in my life where one, I couldn't handle an hangover very often anymore, and B, I don't get anything from it anymore. It isn't bringing anything positive to my life. It's just not a thing for me anymore. So it's almost become my thing, and there'll be a few people grinning because I'm quite faddy, as I can see Matt Craig giggling at me from a distance. I have, sort of tinkered with sobriety in the past and naturally fell off the wagon at about 3 months because I feel like that cold pint, that should be all right. But I read a book by a guy called Alan Carr, not the comedian, another guy. And it just completely changed my opinion of it. And there's not even a relationship to change because there is no relationship anymore. And when I read the book, and he was saying, like, after the book, you will never drink after this again. And it will never bother you. And I naturally, like, skeptically went, nah, don't believe that. But it has. It genuinely has.
And most people don't need that. And that doesn't make you weak or different. We're all different, right? We all get that we're all different. The poison is in the dose. I could take a small amount of something and I'm off on the fun train to Unicorn Town. Yeah. Other people can do lots of things socially. They can be around certain behaviors. They can be around certain substances. They can do certain things and they can tolerate it. I used to think that made me weak. It just makes me different. Yeah. It just means you can do that and I can't. What a crutch for me, unfortunately. But there's also lots of things I'll be able to do that you won't be able to do. So this is not an accusation to anybody that partakes in anything. Because when you say to somebody, "Do you take any drugs?" and they go, "No." And I go, "Well, you didn't just have a cup of tea then?" But we use this word drugs and we wrap it up in needles and smoke and criminals. Do you know what I mean? Most people are partaking in this substance of some form on a regular basis. But it's really good. It's so healthy to look back at it and go, am I in control of this or is it in control of me? You know? And also, what you think it will cost you to stop doing it. Am I interested? Do my friends still want to spend time with me? Am I cutting off a big social chunk of my life? But things change as you go through life. Things that used to work before, strategies, tactics, behaviors, friends, environments. You know, we all know that we change and evolve through time. And as we said right at the beginning of our conversation, sometimes that'll involve a lot of goodbyes. Goodbyes to people, goodbyes to jobs, goodbyes to habits. And there's nothing wrong with that. Goodbyes to stations, goodbyes to watches. Doesn't mean you're better than them because you want to move on. Just means that things have changed for you. And that's okay. When I look at the 7 variations of my life, I ran lots of businesses. I had a travel company, I had a cleaning company, I had 2 gyms, I had a pizza company. We'd go to events, and I was doing lots of things. I was speaking to another individual earlier, I won't mention who was spreading remarkably thin. He was setting himself on fire to keep everybody warm. And there's only so long you can pour from an empty cup before something breaks. And I'll repeat what I said to that person because it sounds similar to your story with alcohol is most things in life will whisper before they scream. It's whether you're hearing the whispers. When you wake up in the morning, you feel terrible. When your knees jiggling a little bit and you ignore it. When the person isn't treating you very well in the workplace and you man up, someone else convinces you it's not that bad, you don't need to put in a grievance against it. All of these whispers, you can only ignore for so long and they will become a scream. The partner isn't treating you very well. The food you're eating isn't feeding you. You're drinking from the bottles that empty you, whatever it is. So I would just invite everybody because I want to be respectful of time. We do these things for like 3 hours, and there's never usually anybody else here, so we just chat for ages. Go and listen to the whispers would be my probably closing point.
Cool. We have got a very short period for any questions from the audience before we do wrap this up. Matt Wild?
You talked about social media being king these days, and it appears that most people who shout the loudest on social media have got the most money. So Andrew Tate and the toxic masculinity trait that you talk about that are good get lost in the ether. They're all emasculated to some degree, but we can't afford as men to display it, I suppose. How do we shout out at people that have got the most money?
Don't think we do.
These young men are seeing this and think we're not successful, really
know.
powerful. They're sending them a message out, so how do we get around that when we haven't got as loud a voice or as much money or the social media profile?
But I think we've got the best story. I don't think social media is king, but you're right, it is the most influential thing in our world, by far. I think the Fire and Rescue Service has got the best kept secret in any job. With respect to police, because some people hate the police, some people like the police. Most people hate the police. Yeah. It's just you. We have such a great product with so many incredible men and women, in our fire and rescue services. But we clench it through fear of committing professional suicide, in my opinion. There's amazing stuff happening on every fire station. You throw a stick in the air on a fire station in the UK Fire and Rescue Service, you'll find an interesting person probably doing an interesting thing, or definitely has an interesting story to tell. There's a reason they're not telling it. But when I think about like Bear Grylls, I'd personally go, I think that's probably a positive role model. But you're right, they're not screaming louder and everything like that. And the people that didn't need to be told not to be toxic males were the ones that listened. So we probably haven't got to tell half the people in the room, don't be a toxic male. But we all got the same message. So the people that were really, really genuinely scared of upsetting somebody, we all went quiet, because we definitely don't want to upset anybody. The people that needed it the most and listened the least, now just scream the loudest. And in a vacuum of positive role models, boys in 15 to 17, younger maybe, they funnel to the only role models left. Because they know no different. We're not giving them anything else. I think we have got the deck is stacked in our favour, unless we really ruin it. But the fire service was here long before us, it will be here long after. I'm going to make no difference at all. People will forget it. But there's still going to be people doing this stuff. And it's hard to trust them, because lots of them are doing it for nefarious means, and they might be selling their gym membership or doing whatever else they're doing. But I'd love to see us try and fumble into a better version of that, where we can. We don't have an Ant Middleton. Not that he's a positive role model, but I mean, we had, who was the guy I spoke to you about? Channel 5 Interceptor that we had on the podcast. Ben something, can't remember his name. Channel 5 Interceptor, police officer driver, was a pretty cool role model, interesting guy, talked a lot about it. Interceptor, I think, still that's the biggest Channel 5 show forever. It's massive. We're not managing to do that in the fire service, and I don't know why. Well, I do know why. I think we're scared. I think we've scared a lot of us. So even if they said, hey, so-and-so, Red Watch, we'll bring some cameras on your station, and there are services. I think you guys have done something like that, haven't you?
Yeah, sort of 20 years ago.
Oh, no.
Me and you were on Nick Jonas, weren't we?
Someone did one like last year or something.
Yeah, West Yorkshire did one.
West Yorkshire, sorry, I apologise. And it probably was good, bad, and indifferent, and some people went, oh, rubbish. Great. More of, different, better. More, same, whatever. We can't not be in the space and then have the hypocrisy of going, why are we struggling with recruitment? We've got to put it out there. So I have no answer. But I agree with you, mate. I agree with you. We need to give people positive role models.
Paul?
Going to be quite a hard question to answer, I think. Barring...
Is it for him or me?
For yourself. Barring Deb and Mark, is there anyone that's been on the podcast?
Bar Deb and Mark. Who I disagreed with.
Not disagreed with, didn't necessarily, but you thought, you know what, that's absolutely a real amazing piece of content we've done for the fire service, and I would really recommend anybody to go out and listen to it. Or just the whole thing in general.
Yeah, I hate giving that answer and saying the whole thing. The debriefs are the most popular. not for some reason, but like, because we pull loads of stuff together and we fact check them and blah, blah, blah. It's not really about a specific person, no. I have a real recency bias, which is no surprise, having done 480 episodes. So we spoke to Alan House. Oh my God, it's not out yet. It'll be out in a couple of weeks. Alan House is the archivist and historian for the Firefighters Memorial Trust. Oh my Lord. What an absolute cornucopia of knowledge. That guy is incredible. So much humility, so much understanding. It's just a really incredible person to listen to. There's a lady, Colette Black. I hate to mention senior leaders because it sounds performative. Colette Black, she was the most influential woman in fire. I think she's like CEO or deputy chief of somewhere. She was a really, really interesting person. And for the fire behaviour passion, does anybody know who Dave Payton is? 1, 2, yeah. Recorded with Dave about 2 weeks ago. And we split it into 2 sessions. So Dave has been part of so much fire behaviour development. He was West Mids for 20 years. He's been taught at the college for many years, teaching firecraft, loads of international travel. That was just so eye-opening. And that's why I call it learning out loud, because I go into these things and I've done a bit of prep, but I want to make mistakes. I don't mind, because I want to get rid of all of the performative of it and just make it like a really authentic conversation. Because there's nothing more disappointing than when you listen to 2 people and they both already know everything the other person is going to say. You're like, well, this is clearly a performance. That's a practice speaker. And they're just going to press play and pause between things. So I'd offer those 2. Search for anything that says a debrief if you've never heard it before. Yeah. Chris is coming on. Chris is going to come on next year. Unless, of course, he hates me after today and we have a quiet conversation in reception. He's looking at me weird. I feel a bit nervous. I don't even work in South Yorkshire, I feel like. Yikes. Appreciate it. Thank you, Chris. And I was invited here and I'm very appreciative. What you're doing here is fantastic. And I'm not saying that just at the end of this, but it's great.
Any more questions? So just to circle back to what Pete just said about being performative, I can confirm that the microphone is not on. I've just realised about halfway through that I've not pressed the mic.
These 3 are on, though.
Them 3 are on, so that's the most important thing. And I've read absolutely none of my notes, so I wasn't prepared for anything I've just said because I didn't read anything. I did send it off that.
It's like trying to herd cats having a chat with me, though, because I just come up over here somewhere.
Well, yeah, so that brings us to an end of the live Firefighters podcast from the International Men's Day at South Yorkshire Fire Rescue. So thank you, Pete.
Appreciate it, brother. Thank you.
Well, that's it for today, folks. Hope you took a lot away from that episode. We started the Firefighters podcast to develop, inspire, connect, motivate, represent, and most importantly, celebrate the world of incredible emergency services operators and the wider sector through this series of wide-ranging conversations. We really love creating this podcast and bringing it to so many people. Did you know you can also find these on YouTube? We do a lot of video podcasts now. You can head over to our YouTube page and follow, subscribe there. And as a final ask from us, whatever platform you're on, please rate the podcast. It really helps us as a key performance indicator to reach more and more people. I've been your host, Pete Wakefield. This has been the Firefighters Podcast. And wherever you are in the world, please stay safe, be happy, live with intention, and where possible, please remember and support your firefighters and first responders. I'll see you next time.